You're standing in your kitchen, holding a familiar snack you've enjoyed for decades. The afternoon sun filters through the window, but your mind feels cloudy. You open a drawer to grab a spoon, only to stop mid-reach. What was it you came in here for? The memory is just gone. For a moment, you laugh it off, but deep inside, a small ripple of fear forms. What if these little lapses aren't just normal aging? What if something you eat every day is slowly, silently stealing your memories? As a brain doctor, I've seen this pattern far too often. Patients come in worried about memory slips, expecting to hear that it's just stress or age. But after reviewing their diet, I notice a troubling theme. There's one snack, often marketed as healthy or harmless, that keeps showing up in their routines. It's not candy, fast food, or alcohol. No, it's something you might even believe supports your energy and focus. But in reality, for adults over 60, it can accelerate the very brain changes we work so hard to prevent. Your brain, with its intricate network of neurons and delicate chemical balance, is highly sensitive to certain ingredients. With age, the blood-brain barrier, the shield that keeps harmful substances out, becomes less efficient. That means even trace amounts of certain compounds from food can slip through, inflaming and damaging brain tissue. And this snack, it's a perfect storm, high in quick-digesting sugars, laced with preservatives, and often coated with hidden fats that disrupt communication between brain cells. Picture this. A 67-year-old woman named Martha came to me last spring. She was vibrant, active, and socially engaged, but she'd begun forgetting appointments, mixing up words, and losing track of familiar tasks. She assumed it was just aging. Yet her medical tests didn't show early dementia, at least not yet. When I asked about her diet, she sheepishly admitted she snacked on a certain packaged energy bar every afternoon. It seemed harmless, even smart. After all, it was advertised as natural and wholesome. But when we dug deeper into its ingredients, it became clear that this simple habit was fueling brain inflammation day after day. Before we dive into what exactly makes this snack so dangerous, I need you to understand one thing. Memory loss isn't just about age. It's about cumulative stress on your brain's delicate systems, and food is one of the most overlooked sources of that stress. The wrong snack, eaten at the wrong time, can set off biochemical changes that weaken recall, slow thinking, and even shrink vital memory centers over the years. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 9 common foods, including this snack, that could be quietly eroding your brain's vitality. And by the end, you'll know exactly what to avoid and what to replace it with to keep your memories sharp for years to come. The truth is, aging changes your brain in ways that make it more vulnerable than ever before. Even if you've taken good care of yourself, time alters the very architecture of your mind. By your 60s, your brain naturally loses some volume, especially in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory formation. Neurons begin to communicate more slowly. Blood vessels that once pumped oxygen-rich blood with vigor become narrower and stiffer, reducing the brain's fuel supply. Now, these changes alone don't doom you to memory loss. Many people in their 80s remain sharp and quick-witted. But here's the catch. Your brain's resilience is heavily influenced by what you feed it every single day. When you were younger, you might have bounced back quickly after indulging in something sugary or processed. But as you age, your metabolism slows, your cells repair themselves less efficiently, and your defenses against toxins weaken. Foods that seemed harmless at 40 can start causing real harm at 65. One mainstream fact you may have heard is that oxidative stress increases with age. Think of oxidative stress like tiny sparks of rust forming inside your brain's machinery, slowly eroding its efficiency. Normally, antioxidants from fresh fruits and vegetables help control these sparks. But when your diet includes certain processed snacks, especially ones high in refined carbohydrates and artificial additives, you fan the flames instead of putting them out. What many people don't know is that some snack ingredients can cross the blood-brain barrier and interfere directly with neurotransmitters, the chemicals that help your brain store and retrieve memories. One example is advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These form when sugars bind to proteins or fats, creating compounds that stiffen tissues, inflame blood vessels, and disrupt nerve signaling. AGEs don't just affect your skin and joints, they accumulate in brain tissue too, making it harder for neurons to talk to each other. I remember a patient named David, a 70-year-old retired engineer. He prided himself on staying mentally active with crossword puzzles and chess. But over the course of a year, he noticed an unsettling pattern. He'd forget the names of longtime friends, lose his train of thought mid-sentence, or mix up simple instructions. His MRI showed mild brain shrinkage, but nothing dramatic. It wasn't until we reviewed his daily habits that the culprit came into focus. Every evening, while watching TV, David enjoyed a small bowl of flavored crackers. He believed they were a better choice than cookies or chips. But these crackers were packed with refined starches, vegetable oils high in omega-6 fats, and flavor enhancers that subtly altered brain chemistry. Over time, they were helping to push his brain toward decline. If your brain is already working harder to maintain memory with age, why feed it substances that make that job harder? That's the question I want you to hold in your mind as we move forward. Because the snack I'm about to dissect isn't just adding calories. It's adding cognitive strain you can't afford. And if you think the damage comes only from sugar or salt, wait until you learn about the hidden compound inside the snack that's been linked to faster neuron loss in seniors. That's what we'll uncover next. Here's where things take an unexpected turn. You might assume that the main danger in this snack comes from its sugar content, or maybe the salt. But the real culprit is something far less obvious, a hidden ingredient that's been slipping past nutrition labels and into your bloodstream for years. It's a compound that seems harmless at first glance, but inside an aging brain, it can act like a slow-acting toxin. This ingredient is monosodium glutamate, or MSG, though it often appears under more innocent-sounding names like hydrolyzed vegetable protein, yeast extract, or natural flavoring. While the FDA labels MSG as generally recognized as safe, the story changes when we're talking about seniors with already vulnerable brain tissue. MSG is an excitotoxin, meaning it can overstimulate nerve cells to the point of damage or death. In younger people, the brain's defenses are strong enough to manage occasional exposure. But after 60, the blood-brain barrier weakens, and MSG can slip through more easily, flooding delicate neurons with excessive calcium and triggering inflammation. One mainstream fact about aging is that neuron regeneration slows dramatically over time. Once brain cells die, they aren't easily replaced. Every loss counts. Add to that the subtle but cumulative effect of daily MSG exposure, and you have a recipe for faster cognitive decline. Now, here's the lesser-known side. MSG doesn't just affect neurons directly, it can also disrupt the balance of neurotransmitters like glutamate and GABA. These are the gas and brakes of your brain's signaling system. Too much glutamate stimulation, without enough GABA to calm it down, leads to overexcited nerve cells. Imagine a car engine revving non-stop. It overheats, wears out, and eventually fails. This is what can happen inside your brain on a microscopic level. I once treated a patient named Lillian, a 74-year-old retired school teacher. She was disciplined about her diet. No sodas, no candy, and lots of home-cooked meals. But she loved one indulgence, a small bag of seasoned rice crackers she kept in her pantry. They were labeled light and low fat, so she felt safe enjoying them a few times a week. Over the years, though, she began struggling to recall former students' names, even the ones she'd taught. For years, her daughter noticed her repeating the same stories within minutes. When we checked her pantry and read the ingredient label together, MSG appeared 3 different times under different aliases. Once Lillian eliminated those crackers and replaced them with raw nuts and fresh fruit. Her memory lapses didn't vanish overnight, but she noticed fewer blank moments during conversations. This doesn't mean MSG alone caused her decline. It's rarely just one factor, but removing it took away a constant source of neurological stress. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Your favorite healthy snack may be laced with compounds that overstimulate and damage your brain cells, especially if you're over 60. And the longer this goes on, the less your brain can bounce back. If MSG shocked you, Wait until you hear how even so-called natural sugars in these snacks can sabotage your brain's fuel supply and set the stage for memory loss that accelerates year after year. Mr. Howard was 68 when he first walked into my office, his wife at his side. She spoke more than he did, explaining that he'd recently begun forgetting the names of their closest friends, a couple they'd been playing cards with every Friday night for nearly 20 years. He would greet them warmly, but then call them by the wrong names halfway through the evening. Sometimes, he'd stop mid-sentence and stare at the table, searching for a word that wouldn't come. Howard had always been sharp. A retired accountant, he could once recall long sequences of numbers and dates without effort. He prided himself on paying every bill on time and keeping meticulous household records. But over the past year, his memory had begun to slip in ways that alarmed his wife. It wasn't constant. It came and went, which almost made it more unsettling. When I asked Howard about his diet, he insisted it was pretty healthy. No sodas, very little fried food, and mostly home-cooked meals. But as we dug deeper, a habit emerged. Every afternoon, like clockwork, he reached for a single-serving bag of flavored pretzels. It was his little pick-me-up before tackling crossword puzzles or reading the newspaper. "It keeps me going," he said. I asked him to bring a bag to his next appointment. The nutrition label told a different story. Refined white flour, maltodextrin, artificial coloring, and, most importantly, 3 separate sources of MSG hidden under names like autolyzed yeast extract and flavor enhancer. The seasoning powder also contained high fructose corn syrup, which meant every handful caused a quick spike in blood sugar followed by a crash, starving his brain of steady fuel. One mainstream fact about aging is that your brain depends on a constant, balanced supply of glucose to function well. Sudden spikes and crashes can disrupt concentration and memory. But here's the lesser-known twist. Repeated glucose swings can cause microinflammation in brain tissue, weakening synaptic connections over time. For someone like Howard, with a naturally strong memory, the slow accumulation of these disruptions eventually became noticeable. I asked Howard if he'd be willing to swap his daily pretzels for a small serving of unsalted almonds paired with a few blueberries. He agreed, though with a hint of skepticism. Over the next 3 months, his wife reported fewer name mix-ups and less hesitation in conversation. It wasn't a miracle cure. His brain had already taken some damage, but removing the daily insult gave his neurons a fighting chance. Howard's story is a reminder that memory loss doesn't always announce itself with a loud, sudden event. Sometimes it's the drip, drip, drip of a daily snack, eaten without thought, that erodes your sharpness. And the next danger we'll discuss is even more insidious, because it comes disguised as natural sweetness and can wreak havoc on your brain's energy supply every single day. When most people think about protecting their memory, sugar isn't the first thing they worry about, especially if it comes from something labeled natural. But your brain, despite being the most energy-hungry organ in your body, needs a very steady and balanced supply of glucose. Too much at once, followed by a rapid drop, can leave your neurons struggling to function. Over time, these constant highs and lows can inflict real damage. One mainstream fact about brain health is that blood sugar regulation is critical for cognitive performance. The brain consumes about 20% of your body's glucose at rest, and if that supply fluctuates wildly, mental clarity suffers. But here's the part many seniors aren't told. Even sugars that sound wholesome, like evaporated cane juice, honey powder, or fruit concentrate, can spike your blood sugar just as dramatically as refined table sugar, especially in snack form. That's because when sugars are removed from their natural whole food sources, they lose the fiber, water, and nutrients that slow their absorption. Eating them in a processed snack is like giving your brain a tidal wave of energy it can't fully use, followed by an energy drought when your insulin response clears the glucose too quickly. These swings don't just make you feel tired, they inflame the lining of your blood vessels and contribute to insulin resistance in the brain, a condition some researchers now call type 3 diabetes. I recall a patient named Margaret, a 71-year-old avid gardener. She was active, social, and had no history of diabetes. Yet she came to me complaining of afternoon fog that made it hard to remember where she'd left her gardening tools or which plants she had watered. She assumed it was fatigue from working outside. But when I asked about her diet, she admitted she kept a jar of natural fruit chews in the kitchen. She'd grab 2 or 3 whenever she wanted a little boost. We ran a simple glucose tolerance test. The results showed that although her fasting blood sugar was normal, her post-snack readings spiked dramatically, then crashed within an hour. Those crashes correlated with the very time she experienced her worst memory slips. By replacing the fruit chews with slices of apple and a handful of walnuts, foods that release sugar slowly and provide healthy fats, her mental fog lifted noticeably within weeks. The danger here isn't just the sugar itself, it's the inflammation and oxidative stress triggered by repeated spikes. In an aging brain already coping with reduced blood flow, those microbursts of inflammation chip away at neural pathways essential for memory. Over months and years, that damage accumulates. And sugar isn't the only villain hiding in your snack. In the next section, we'll uncover how certain fats, ones that can linger in packaged foods long after they're banned from fresh products, can harden not just your arteries, but the very pathways your brain depends on to store and retrieve memories. Mrs. Eleanor was 72 when her daughter brought her to my clinic. She'd always been the glue of the family, the one who remembered birthdays, organized holiday dinners, and kept in touch with relatives scattered across the country. But in the last year, her family noticed subtle changes. She'd ask the same question twice in a 10-minute conversation. She'd forget that she'd already added salt to a recipe. And during one particularly painful moment, she didn't recognize her grandson's best friend, a boy who had spent countless afternoons in her living room. When I sat down with Eleanor, she was warm, gracious, and surprisingly self-aware. "I know I'm forgetting more than I used to," she said quietly. "But I don't understand why. I've never been much for junk food." And she was right. She cooked most meals at home, rarely drank soda, and limited desserts to special occasions. It wasn't until I asked about snacks that her daughter chimed in. "Mom has those granola clusters every day," she said. "She says they give her energy in the afternoon." Eleanor smiled. "They're made with oats and fruit. How bad could they be?" The packaging told a different story. Yes, there were oats and bits of dried fruit, but they were bound together with syrups high in fructose, dusted with sweet coatings, and contained small amounts of hydrogenated oils, the trans fats that most people think disappeared from our food supply years ago. The truth is, while trans fats have been banned from fresh cooking oils in many countries, they can still lurk in small amounts in processed snacks, often under labels like partially hydrogenated or shortening. One mainstream fact is that trans fats are notorious for damaging heart health by hardening arteries. But here's the lesser-known danger. They also integrate into the membranes of brain cells, making them less flexible. Neurons need flexible membranes to transmit signals efficiently. When those membranes become rigid, it's like trying to send a message through a frayed wire. It slows down, gets distorted, or doesn't go through at all. In Eleanor's case, these granola clusters were delivering a double blow: sugar spikes from the syrups and structural damage from trace trans fats. Over time, this combination can impair synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to form and strengthen the connections that underlie memory. We worked together to swap her clusters for a mix of raw almonds, pumpkin seeds, and a few dark chocolate chips, snacks rich in antioxidants and healthy fats. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but after 6 months, Eleanor's family noticed she was more engaged in conversations and made fewer repetitive comments. She still had some lapses, but the downward slide had slowed. Her case is a powerful reminder. Even foods that look healthy can hide ingredients that slowly erode your cognitive foundation. And as you'll see in the next section, there's another layer of danger when these snacks interact with medications in ways that magnify memory problems, often without a single warning label. If you take prescription medication, you probably assume that your doctor and pharmacist have covered all the important warnings. And in many cases, they have. Drug interactions, dosage timing, and major side effects are explained clearly. But what rarely gets discussed is how certain snack ingredients can interfere with the way your medication works, especially in the brain. For seniors already vulnerable to memory changes, this interaction can be a silent accelerant of cognitive decline. One mainstream fact is that many medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, or heart rhythm are processed through the liver's cytochrome P450 enzyme system. This same system is responsible for breaking down various compounds found in food. If your snack contains ingredients that compete for or block these enzymes, the medication may either build up to unsafe levels or fail to reach its intended effect. Either outcome can indirectly harm your brain. For example, poorly controlled blood pressure or cholesterol can reduce blood flow to brain tissue, accelerating memory loss. The lesser-known danger lies in certain flavoring agents, preservatives, and even natural extracts hidden in processed snacks. Compounds like furanocoumarins, naturally present in grapefruit and sometimes used in flavor blends, can significantly alter drug metabolism. If your medication is meant to keep your blood pressure stable, an interaction that spikes or drops those levels can leave your brain under-oxygenated for hours at a time. Even short episodes of reduced blood supply can damage hippocampal cells responsible for forming new memories. I recall a patient named Samuel, 69, who had been taking a statin for years without issue. His memory troubles began subtly, misplacing his reading glasses, forgetting the start of a conversation. But over 6 months, the lapses grew worse. His medical tests were largely unchanged, and his cholesterol remained well controlled. It wasn't until his wife mentioned his healthy snack habit that the missing puzzle piece fell into place. Samuel loved a particular brand of citrus-flavored trail mix. It had dried orange peels for zest, along with candied ginger pieces. The ingredient list also included natural citrus extract, which, upon investigation, was rich in furanocoumarins. These compounds were slowing his liver's ability to break down his statin, causing fluctuations in drug levels and side effects, including brain fog and memory gaps. Once he switched to a simpler, unsweetened nut and seed blend, his mental clarity began to improve within weeks. This doesn't mean that every snack will interact with your medications, but it does mean that hidden risks often go unnoticed, especially when they're tucked behind natural or healthy labels. If the idea of a snack-medication interaction startled you, wait until you hear what happens when these same snacks are combined with a lifetime of gradual neural damage from other lifestyle habits. In the next section, I'll show you how one man's decision to quit his favorite snack not only stabilized his memory, but actually led to measurable improvement, proof that it's never too late to protect your brain. Mr. Robert was 73 when he came to see me, a tall, soft-spoken man with the steady demeanor of someone who had spent decades working with his hands. He'd been a carpenter all his life, building everything from kitchen cabinets to small sailboats. His precision and attention to detail had always been his pride. But lately, he'd been making small mistakes, cutting a board an inch too short, forgetting the order of assembly, or leaving tools behind at job sites. His wife had urged him to see me after an unsettling moment. Robert had driven halfway to the hardware store before realizing he didn't know what he had planned to buy. "I never used to be like this," he told me. "It's like my brain gets stuck in neutral." When we reviewed his lifestyle, Robert's habits were mostly admirable. He walked every morning, avoided smoking, and drank alcohol only occasionally. But he admitted to one daily indulgence, peanut butter sandwich crackers from the corner store. "I've been eating those since I was a kid," he said with a smile. "They keep me going between breakfast and lunch." The problem was that these crackers were loaded with refined flour, hydrogenated oils, added sugars, and MSG hidden under spices and natural flavors. They weren't just empty calories, they were a cocktail of ingredients known to disrupt blood sugar stability, inflame blood vessels, and overstimulate neurons. For someone with a brain already, under the natural stress of aging, this was like adding sand to the gears every single day. One mainstream fact is that the brain is remarkably adaptable. It can recover some function if damaging inputs are removed early enough. The lesser-known truth is that seniors can still form new neural connections, a process called neuroplasticity, well into their later years, provided they reduce inflammation and provide the right nutrients. I proposed a simple experiment. Robert would replace his crackers with a small pack of unsalted mixed nuts and a piece of fresh fruit. The nuts offered healthy fats for sustained energy, while the fruit provided natural sugars buffered by fiber. He agreed, although he confessed he'd missed the comfort of his old snack. After 3 months, Robert's improvement was noticeable, not just to him, but to his wife and friends. He was making fewer mistakes in his workshop, remembering shopping lists without writing them down, and even recalling more details from conversations. When we retested his cognitive function using a standard memory recall test, his scores had climbed modestly but measurably. His story is living proof that change is possible. Removing a harmful daily habit, even after decades, can give your brain a fighting chance to repair itself and function more smoothly. But there's one more trap I need to warn you about. A final, hidden risk that often goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. It's the silent link between chronic snacking and compounded brain damage over a lifetime. And understanding it may be the key to preserving your memory for the years ahead. When we talk about brain damage, most people picture a sudden event, a stroke, a head injury, or a severe illness. But the truth is, much of the decline in memory and cognition comes from a slow, silent accumulation of microscopic damage over decades. And for many seniors, that process is fueled by something as ordinary as a daily snack. One mainstream fact is that the brain's white matter, the network of fibers that connects different brain regions, tends to degrade with age. This network is like the wiring in your home. If the insulation wears thin, signals get weaker or disrupted. The lesser-known truth is that diet plays a direct role in the rate of this degradation. Certain ingredients found in processed snacks, refined sugars, inflammatory fats, and synthetic additives don't just cause temporary changes in brain chemistry, they accelerate the breakdown of this vital wiring. Over years, these repeated hits, small spikes in blood sugar, surges in inflammation, tiny bursts of oxidative stress, layer on top of each other. Each incident may be too minor to notice in the moment, but collectively, they rob the brain of resilience. By the time symptoms appear, the underlying damage may have been building for decades. I remember a patient named Helen, 75, who came to me after a frightening episode. She had been reading a novel when she suddenly couldn't follow the plot, even though she'd been engrossed in it the day before. She also noticed she was losing track of conversations halfway through. When we reviewed her diet, she was quick to tell me she ate pretty well. But like so many others, she had a single weakness: small bags of lightly sweetened popcorn she bought in bulk. On the surface, it sounded harmless, but the ingredient list told another story: sugar-coated kernels, artificial butter flavoring containing diacetyl, a compound linked to brain inflammation, and palm oil high in saturated fats that promote arterial stiffness. For Helen, this wasn't just a snack. It was a steady drip of compounds that chipped away at her brain's wiring year after year. We replaced her popcorn with air-popped kernels, drizzled with a small amount of olive oil, and sprinkled with nutritional yeast for flavor. Over the next 6 months, while her memory wasn't fully restored, she reported fewer blank moments and felt more confident following conversations and reading again. The changes weren't dramatic, but they were enough to give her hope. That's the reality. Brain decline isn't inevitable, but the earlier you act, the more ground you can protect. And now, as we move into the final section, I'll show you exactly how to reclaim your brain's vitality, what to cut out, what to replace it with, and the daily habits that can keep your memory strong well into your later years. If there's one message I hope you take from this, it's that memory loss is not simply the price of getting older. Aging changes how your brain processes nutrients, manages inflammation, and repairs itself, but these changes don't guarantee decline. The real danger is how everyday habits, especially seemingly harmless snacks, can accelerate those natural shifts into something far more damaging. Across the stories we've explored, Howard's daily pretzels, Eleanor's healthy granola clusters, Robert's sandwich crackers, and Helen's sweetened popcorn, the pattern is unmistakable. Small, consistent exposures to refined sugars, hidden MSG, trans fats, artificial flavorings, and other additives weaken your brain's wiring, inflame your neurons, and starve your mind of steady energy. For years, you may not notice the harm. But slowly, these invisible blows accumulate until they begin to rob you of names, faces, words, and moments you should never have to lose. The encouraging news is that change works at any age. Your brain is remarkably adaptable. It can rewire itself, strengthen surviving connections, and even form new ones, provided it's given the right environment to heal. That means removing the daily insults and replacing them with steady, nourishing fuel. Here are 6 brain-safe snack alternatives that I recommend to my patients. Raw or lightly roasted nuts, almonds, walnuts, pecans provide healthy fats and vitamin E, which protects cell membranes. Fresh berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, packed with antioxidants that fight oxidative stress. Apple slices with natural almond butter, a slow-release energy source that avoids sharp glucose spikes. Pumpkin or sunflower seeds, rich in magnesium and zinc, essential for memory function. Carrot sticks with hummus, combines fiber with plant-based protein for steady fuel. Dark chocolate, 70% or higher. In moderation, offers flavonoids that support blood flow to the brain. Alongside better snacks, adopt 3 key rules for safe eating as you age. Eat earlier in the day so your brain can use the energy before rest. Pair carbohydrates with protein or fat to slow glucose absorption. Avoid eating right before bed when your body is focused on repair, not digestion. Most importantly, be vigilant about ingredient lists. Look for hidden sugars, artificial flavors, hydrogenated oils, and chemical preservatives. These are red flags for your brain's long-term health. I know it can feel overwhelming to change habits you've had for decades. But remember Robert's story. By making a single swap, he began to reclaim clarity and confidence. You can do the same. Every small step you take away from damaging foods is a step toward protecting your independence, your relationships, and your identity. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0 point. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, your brain is worth protecting every single day.